Productions.
The Green Route merch available now on sourkidsmerch.com.
Due to suggestive adult themes and dialogue, this podcast is intended for adults. In other words, the truth is ugly, so we get ugly right along with it. Everything we say is out of love for ourselves, our people, and our community. Sincerely, the Green Route Podcast. I want to welcome y'all back to the Green Route Podcast. I am GS.
And I'm Marlissa. What's up, y'all? Welcome back.
Welcome back. We're going to dive right into it because we got 5 very important, interesting topics to discuss.
Let's do it. All right, y'all. So I think, did we talk about OJ last week? Maybe we touched on it.
He hadn't died.
What day did we record last week?
Yeah, we
recorded on Wednesday. Never mind. Maybe we didn't. I talked about it somewhere. Anyway, OJ died, y'all.
Orenthal James Jr.
Yeah, I'm not black. I'm OJ.
I'm not black. I'm OJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
The boy is gone, and I mean it's interesting because when I heard it, the first thing I recognized was the generational differences between like who was talking about it and how they were talking about it. So, for example, young kids with, I guess they're Gen Z or Alpha or whatever.
Right.
They don't know nothing about like what's going on. They were like, oh, some old football player died. And so explaining to them the connections, I use the Kardashians to really like back them
to help them understand
who OJ is. And so I was like with some high school students. So yes, I did talk about it with them last Friday when I was with my Madison kids. And they was just like, oh yeah, he like played ball, right? And I'm like, yeah, but the whole murder thing, they was like, nah, I don't. I was like, do y'all know who
they weren't even a lot. They probably wasn't even thought of.
But like I guess, but I feel like there are just cultural moments, even though I wasn't alive, like my parents would talk about it so much that I'd be like, oh, I don't remember it, but I've heard of it before. But a lot of them was just like, I don't know what he did.
I'm saying I don't think we realize how much information is out there that could just easily overshadow it.
Yeah, that's
you
fair.
Know what I'm saying? So,
that's fair. They're busy like trying to figure out the latest TikTok challenge. So touche, my G.
Yeah, it's a lot of information out there. Yeah, y'all. So OJ is gone, and I think the point that I wanted to bring up for sure in all of this was the dual coverage. And and when I say dual, I don't mean to say that it's in no way, shape, or form evenly distributed. Let me give you an example. I felt like every mainstream media site wanted to cover the murder, the OJ chase, the Bronco, the trial.
Yep.
Channel, what was it? And I was actually kind of embarrassed. It was Channel. Let me not misquote, but it was definitely one of the local news stations here. I just know Sean Rabb, Clarice Tinsley, and they the OGs, so no disrespect to them at all. I know they didn't write it up. But they, on the day of, they talked about his death. It was in the cycle, and they said, and this was again the weird shit. They said tonight from 7 to 9. We're going to replay our entire our entire coverage from 94, 95 of the chase. And it was like, just tune in to watch. And it was just like the white Bronco, all of that. I said that to say that if you had an idea of OJ, prior to, then I'm guessing that you already knew who you were. You already know what you like. You already know what you're into. But for those people who had no idea who OJ was, he's not going to be remembered. If they're watching that news station, he's not going to be remembered as a football player, as a star, as this. No, his only existence is wrapped up in the murder trial that he was found innocent of. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I just don't like the idea.
But and I'll say this, like I remember even before his death, when he got caught up with the whole thing in Vegas, right? And remember the judge that heard his case and ended up sentencing him. She made a statement that made me kind of look like, but it was a white woman, and she was just like, I want to be clear that your sentence has nothing to do with your previous case. justice did what justice is supposed to do in that case. So what I'm about to tell you is not about, you know, a previous murder trial or anything like that. And then she sentenced him to jail. And I remember thinking, like, why would you even say all of that if your sentencing has nothing to do with what happened to him or him getting off in the past? And not that I think it was an incredibly harsh sentence, but
it was excessive for what it was.
Like, she wasn't like life in prison, right? But stealing your own shit back that someone had really taken from you. So, but what it really taught me in that moment was that there was still a lot of animosity.
Absolutely.
For this man who, honestly, I just didn't even think about after a while. Like, it was just like, oh, okay, we're moving on to the next crazy person. But there was a lot of white animosity.
Oh, it was jarring.
Yes. And here I don't know where this lady was. She was probably a judge back then because she was a little older. But she had to watch this Black man get off for something that, of course, the world assumed he had done. But Johnny motherfucking Cochran. If the glove don't fit,
we must have quit.
So yeah. So I think what we're seeing in the coverage is that same animosity that has just kind of been sitting there festering and waiting for OJ's name to come up again. And now you can't send him to prison because he's gone, but I can shit on your legacy.
Absolutely.
I can talk shit about you post-mortem.
I think for me, the thing, one of the other interesting parts about this, because you're right, what we saw was, or just over the years, even post the trial, what we've seen is our attempts to, for retribution. And I think the point that I pull out of this is a theme that I've seen consistently over time, is that white people do not forget. They want, if white Americans feel like they were disenfranchised or harmed in a meaningful way, and again, a white woman being killed by a Black man, and us watching the entire thing. Yeah, white America was hurt. America was hurt. Not to say that there weren't any Black people that were hurt by it, but for sure we knew white America was hurt because it was very divided on that. So that was a very interesting thing, and I saw that and I was like, yeah, they're not gonna forget. So for all of my brothers and sisters out there, if you choose not to forget about any of the hardships and harms that have come to us, just know we are human just like they are, and we should not forget. Right. Never. So I thought that was interesting. Now, let's be clear here. Black people supporting OJ did not mean that we support death. Did not mean that we wanted Nicole to be murdered, Nicole and her friend be murdered. That's not it. We were not in support of murder. The reason why Black people stood by OJ so vehemently was, one of the issues was, we were on the heels of the riot after Rodney King. Now, if you don't know anything about Rodney King was a Black man who was pulled out of his car and beaten excessively. One police officer at a time beat him. Took turns beating him. It was recorded. Someone recorded, released it to the media, and the police officers still got off. Yeah. So and with that, LA went crazy, right? You were there. That video, when that video was released, like, it was a known fact that you pretty much better stay in the house. It was bad. Now, what was crazy about that trial in particular was that they moved it to overwhelmingly Republican conservative section of the city. It wasn't even in LA actually that the trial took place. They moved it because of the white jurors, right? Looked at that and was just like, I mean, what did he do? Did he deserve it? What? Still got off. And so you are absolutely right. You have these people, and mind you, OJ is happening in the same city. This is I was at my sister's graduation in Irvine, and we were at the hotel waiting. No, we had just come back from her graduation,
And I remember watching the Bronco on TV because our hotel overlooked the 405 freeway. And so I would go to the TV.
You were part of history? You was watching history there?
I would go to the TV and go to see if I could spot the car because he did take the 405 down south. And so sure enough, like you are dealing with this city that is coming off of this major acquittal, right? Something that we saw happen on video and these officers still got off. And then you saw them move the puzzle pieces in the officer's favor to be able to get them to get off. So yeah, when Rodney King happened, we didn't have no video, but we knew that y'all had just taken one black man down. And we got one right here again that's like being accosted by the police all over again. And so I think you're absolutely right. Like every time I talk to a black person about O.J. Simpson, they're like, yeah, I mean, yeah, no one should be murdered.
Absolutely.
But also, I'm gonna like stand by my, like you can be wrong and I see somebody like treating you wrong and I'll be like, hey, that's still my boy though. Like I'll talk to him on the back end. I'll get his shit together on the back end, but you're not gonna just sit here and like deal with him any old type of way in front of me. And I think that's how black people saw him. Like, I mean, also though, OJ did tell us he wasn't black.
He did say that.
I think we felt sorry for him too, because it was just like actually, you are.
Let's be clear here. Now we won't gloss over that part of his legacy. O.J. Simpson, it was quoted that when O.J. was getting picked up and arrested and leaving his house, he said something to the effect of, and God rest his soul if I'm misquoting him grossly, but when he was inside of the police car being taken to county, when he saw all the black people who were supporting, he was like, how did all these niggas get in here? He said something to that effect. All these black people getting in here. When they move here? They never seen so many.
Oh, OJ.
So let's be clear. There was some cultural cleansing that was necessary for that black man's mind. And truth be told, he's no different than a lot of black celebrities who got to a place to where their blackness, they no longer saw their blackness as a cultural empowering tool, but as something they just happen to be, and they just happen to be talented and happen to just have this luck with white people or loved by white people that they just completely forgot that aspect of them.
I see it a lot. People who gain financial success or celebrity status or whatever, they think that transcends their race. And then there's always a reminder though. There's always something. I wrote an article about Eddie Bernice Johnson and what had happened to her in the hospital. This is a U.S. Congresswoman, right? Who Dallas like royalty, and to know that she was in that Baylor Scott and White rehab center, left in her own feces and urine, and
suffering.
As I was researching for that article, like Beyonce's name came up and her struggles when she had her twins, and Serena's name and what happened. And I was just thinking, like, this is a real thing. Money doesn't, it only insulates you so much from the systemic, like historic issues that are built into the very fabric and systems of this country. And so even though like Serena is who she is and Beyonce is who she is and Eddie Bernice Johnson, at the end of the day, those things can only insulate you so much. So much. And I think OJ learned that not only with the murder trial, but also with the one from Vegas, right? Like, where my boy, you're all those things. Yeah. You know, you are an amazing athlete and an incredible businessman and all that, but also.
Right.
You're
right, brother. You cannot be shielded from it. So I think, like I said, OJ was, in my opinion, a very needed cautionary tale for all young black men, for sure. It is that, you can be considered one of the greatest athletes, and OJ, let's be clear, was considered one of the greatest athletes of all time.
To this day, yeah. Yep.
To this day. But at the same time, we have to understand that we're not getting something from someone who wouldn't want something back and wouldn't be okay and wouldn't mind taking it back if need be. So yeah. R.I.P. OJ.
R.I.P. All right, well, let's flow into the second story. Speaking of being reminded.
Being reminded. So yeah, no, this is a good segue because the OJ trial introduced us to dog whistles and it introduced us to how the media itself can create ideas that encourage their more radical believers.
Yeah.
And right now in North Carolina, there is a Black-owned bookstore that is closing its doors because they are tired of the threats. It is a Black family-owned bookstore full of children's books, and you wonder, how did we get to this point? How? And Mel and I pretty much summed it up. It is the remnants of DEI, the attacks on DEI. We are all aware that there are several states that are fighting to have books, literature, material, authors completely pulled off their shelves because they feel like it is indoctrinating their youth. They feel like America being questioned through books, through literature is not the right way to go. And as a result, they are coming for books. So we have to understand that what's happening now is they're not only attacking school districts, but they're attacking small businesses. And this is a case of that because, again, this woman is not in anyone's school district. No one has tapped her and say, hey, you need to be a part of our book selecting committee for our library, like, Oklahoma, places like that. She's not a part of anyone's school district.
Yeah.
Yet and still she's being attacked, or they're being attacked.
Yeah, so yeah, I think the bookstore opened last year, Juneteenth. It's called Liberation Station. And like Gia said, it's in Raleigh, North Carolina. And, this woman we were actually watching a segment on it. And when the kids walk in, like, there's a sign that says, like, take a seat and breathe, you're home. And so you can tell that it is about creating a welcoming space for kids to expand their minds and their empathy and all the things that come with reading books, right? We know that reading books not only makes you a better critical thinker, but it makes you more empathetic because you have to put your mind into the mind of someone else. And so I get to play around in Gabe's mind for a little bit when I read a book that Gabe wrote. It just makes you a better person. And so it makes sense that there would be an attack on books because they are a vehicle to share ideas and to share thoughts with people who may not experience what you experience, but they can absolutely gain understanding of your experience. So she, the owner of the store, her last name is Miller. Let me get her full name so I can do her justice. Excuse me. So the owner of the store, her name is Victoria Scott Miller. She pretty much said that she started receiving threats. The bookstore started receiving like these racist threats, right? And it is because the bookstore is specifically dedicated to Black children. And the books that are carried in the bookstore are by minority and underrepresented authors. So if you look at like pictures of the store, right? I mean, they got black and gold on the wall right here. Like I see a book about the 1619 Project on the wall over here. So you can tell that they are trying to tell the stories of Black people and by underrepresented artists. But I think Gabe is right in that this is all because people have been emboldened by what we're seeing. You can't go attack spaces that are meant to be safe for Black people, and I'm going to keep saying this on this show, that were built because we were not safe in other spaces. Exactly. These spaces that y'all are now attacking were needed, not desired. They were necessary for our safety. And so you go attack those and you dismantle those. And what that says to other people looking at what's happening in this country is, oh, I didn't actually like the fact that they were centering little nigger kids over here anyway.
That's
so
basically
now
the
I
message
can
that we're
go
getting.
attack this bookstore and do what I want to do with it to make sure that like they don't have a safe space anymore.
Right.
What I think though is going to happen is y'all are just going to push us underground. If I can't have a DEI program, well, no problem. I am just going to make this group so tailored, or this space so tailored to people who look like me that you won't even be comfortable coming in there. I won't say anything in my mission statement or values about it being for Black people or for women or anything but I am going to tailor it so much that even you will feel decentered in this space and will not want to enter. And I think that's honestly just going to have to be our workaround. So what I hope is that this lady finds another way to get it done, because it is necessary.
It's necessary.
We just found out that the majority of our kids in this country are not reading or writing at grade level. And so to shutter yet another bookstore when books are already being pulled off of the shelves at school is crazy. One more thing I'm going to point out, and I'm going to shut the hell up. Schools are one thing. Publicly funded schools are one thing. If the public says we don't want books like this on the shelves, and the public, the majority of the public says that, we have to do.
We're in a democracy.
Okay. This woman's business is privately owned. Y'all have no jurisdiction or right to tell her what she can and cannot carry in a store that her and her family own. And so this is, I think, where the violent tactics come in, because there's no law that says your private business can't carry these things. It is private property. But I can at least make you uncomfortable so that you don't even want to do it. And I think we're going to start seeing even more of that towards privately held and owned companies and entities, because again, you don't have any jurisdiction when it comes to the law, but you can make something so uncomfortable through violence and racist attacks that you may push people out. And I think we're going to start seeing more of that.
This is a slippery slope. To your last point, I think what they do everything they can lawfully to keep empowering material out of the radar, out of their schools. They do what they can. For the things that are not under the thumb of the law or their jurisdiction, that's where the goons come in. That's where they come in. This is where, and in their mind, if they're seeing their governmental officials shit on our literature, our books, and ban them, they see that as you know what? If they're trying to get these books and these materials moved out of our schools, which I agree with, then I'm almost sure that they would agree with me using these tactics on these small businesses. That's what it is. Yeah. Because they don't feel like these small businesses are going to be protected. They don't feel like that. So let's be clear here, y'all. This is no different than 1960s. The intimidation that they use to keep us from voting, the intimidation that they use to keep us from going to their schools. It's no different from that. It's the same dog showing itself.
That's the perfect parallel.
Yeah. And to your other point, we're going to have to make a more concerted effort because we know that it's not going to stop. Who's to say that they're not going to make it illegal at all to make books that deal directly with our culture, with Black culture? Who's to say that they're not going to get to that point? Again, we never thought that they would be throwing away our books at this point. It was like, y'all the ones who teaching us how to read or lack thereof. Right. And now y'all trying to take away our books. Just know, y'all, from what this shows me, they're feeling the sting. They're feeling it. Again, they're attacking our schools. They're attacking our books. It may be time for us to just go ahead and start making those purchases because the next step I see actually is them going out to publishers I see them going out to publishers. And if you can't find anyone to publish your books, then our books will more and more start to we're going to see that incremental subtraction of our material. So support your local bookstores. Shout out to the Pan African Bookstore. I've been going there since I was a kid. Shout out to the ancestor Baba Bendeli. He was one of the owners, husband to Akwete, who now runs the bookstore. So shout out to them. Keep supporting
Blacklit. Gotta give Blacklit some love. Love
shout
y'all.
out Blacklit. Yep. Shout out Blacklit. So y'all, this is to me, it's looking like another phase of the war against us. So
yeah, and Black people, I think another thing that we have to do is start thinking ahead. You made a great point. If they start attacking all the major publishers, right, that can distribute our art, Black people, it may be worth saying, okay, how do we set up our own network of publishers, distribution, digitization, so that we can share our work and create an ecosystem and an economy for Black art. And I'm talking ownership, right? Like, I don't know any major Black publishing companies.
We don't.
I can't think of one. Printing, I can't think of one.
Yeah.
So I think as we watch what's happening, and I would not be surprised, like, I don't think they'll be able to say, like, you can't write anything about Black people, because that's our freedom of speech, right? That's our, right? We'd have to check. But I can see like lobbyists going to publishers and saying, hey, I will get this law passed for you if you play by this rule, right? And the law could be something as simple as, publishers can now file for nonprofit status and don't have to pay taxes, right? So, something simple like that to get them to play ball to, hey, the next time there is a Black empowerment book that comes across your desk, even if it's good, the answer is going to be no. And I could see that happening in a backdoor deal.
I don't know. I think about all this. No, I see that for sure. I see that happening, or see that as a potential. And I think it's sad that we even got to think like this. It's sad that we have to think about all the way how deep this is going to go. I've always believed this, like, in terms of our people, even in this country, like, we've lost so much. We've lost land ownership. We've lost economic power. We still have buying power. Let's be clear. That part is still there. And I think that's on purpose.
Right.
But in terms of our ownership, in terms of what we've lost so much. And yet, one of the few things that we do have is the ability to create media for ourselves. Yeah. Media through books, through educating our children. And that's being attacked.
Yep.
To me, it's just, it's just low. To me, it's a sign that we really are seen as a threat when we're not trying to be threat. Only thing we're doing is just trying to save ourselves. We're just trying to empower ourselves. The majority of books with Black faces on there, the majority of them are from Black authors who simply want to educate our own or fill in the gap. They just say, hey, I didn't see a lot of us in these books. So if you interview from the majority of interviews that I've seen from Black authors who create children's books, a lot of them will say the reason why I'm doing this is because I did not see that representation growing up for myself. And it's like, that's all. It's like, it's interesting how they're being attacked just for trying to create representation. Again, not anti anybody. They didn't say, oh, I did this because I hate seeing white kids. No one's saying any of that.
Yeah.
They're literally just saying, I knew for me as a kid, I'm trying to, it's interesting how Black authors are like a good amount of Black people in general. The only thing we want to do is just create a world that's better for our children.
That's it. I wanted to tell stories. That's it.
That's it.
And then I'm gonna really shut up, y'all, because this is so personal to me as someone who grew up loving stories, and now that is what I do. Like, so for me, it's so personal. the one thing I think about all the time is like, I was reading Isabel Wilkerson's book about the Great Migration, The Warmth of Other Suns. And very early on in the book, she tells the story of 4 people who migrated elsewhere from the South. But very early on in the book, there's this story where this guy like goes to a church. He's a kid. Him and his friends go to this white church, and instead of being welcomed, like the other kids throw rocks at him, and like he goes home and he asks his dad, like, hey, like, what kind of God they got in there? Because the God you teach me about would never have me do that to someone. And his dad responds, and I'm going to butcher it, but the essence of his response was, you always know your strength by the type of weapon that your enemy brings to use against you. And I remember thinking about like storytelling and how that is what's being attacked right now. And it also reminded me of how powerful storytelling is, like how our ancestors would pass down information through stories. And it could be through song, it could be through an actual story, it could be through drum circles, whatever. And so this is why I encourage everyone, like, get a banned book list and go read the books on that list. Because there is a reason that they don't want you to read these books in particular. Every book that I've ever read on a banned book list has been usually one of the most powerful books I've ever written. I mean, I've ever read. The Bluest Eye, Push, To Kill a Mockingbird. Like, all of those stories not only entertain you, but they teach you about our history and they teach you about our struggle, and they do it in such an artistic way that you're entertained at the same time. Right. So because they are attacking storytelling, it lets you know just how powerful of a tool it is for educating and for creating empathy and really for making sure that our culture survives.
Absolutely. I think for Black people for many years, we relied on storytelling. We relied on these things to keep our culture going. And books, literature, stories, like those were absolute necessities for us to remember who we were and where we came from. So there's been an attack on that since we've been here. Let's be clear. Telling our story, there's always been an attack on us telling our story, for sure. I'm gonna put on my conspiracy theory hat right now. And I'm gonna say this. Black people have always been the scapegoat. This is just another angle for this. Black people have always been the scapegoat for white problems, for white issues. Do I think DEI is a real issue in their communities? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do I think Black literature is an issue for their community? Absolutely not. I do not. I think that what Black people, one of the things that Black people may serve in this country is that when the white racist mass, when white racists who have power have an issue, they have to find things. They have to find something to be angry about and devote their attention for it. And usually it's because they're trying to get something across, and pointing the direction or bringing hollowed out issues or hollowed out attention to something that isn't really an issue. Is just something that they've done. We had this whole issue, and I'm gonna bring it back to what was it called? The class critical race theory. Critical race theory was not a real thing to be upset about because it was not being taught in schools. It wasn't
a K through 12 thing.
It wasn't anything like that. So I'm just using that as an example to support my theory.
Right.
Their attacks on books, their attacks on our literature might be because they need something to rile their base up to get them to do something.
I agree with that.
I don't know what it is. I can't say why it is. Again, they've been attacking the public education system for years. Shout out to Betsy DeVos. That's not a legit shout out. Let's be clear. Yeah. It's not really a legit one. This just might be another plan that they've devised to break down the public education system. And again, do I think that they want to fix the public education system? No.
Hell no.
There is money involved with what they're doing. So
I think they say ignorance is bliss. Ignorance also could mean wealth.
Ignorance is bliss, and it also sells tickets.
That's real.
So let's be clear. So y'all, just stay woke. Stay woke.
Stay read up.
Stay read up. Go support. Go buy. Go purchase some books from Black authors.
Yeah.
Support.
Please, y'all. Find you a banned book list and read something on it.
Yeah.
Read something. All right. Sorry, that took a long time, but we gonna get through the rest. So our third topic is we got to go to Vietnam. There's a real estate property development tycoon who was recently sentenced to death.
To death.
She didn't commit murder though.
Did not commit murder.
She didn't take nobody baby out, a dog, nothing. She was involved in what I believe is the country's largest financial fraud case that they've had in their history. So I want to get her name. Truong My Lang was the chairwoman of another company. And she is being charged with embezzlement, bribery, violating banking rules, I believe, and maybe some other shit. Long story short, the woman is fucking brilliant and her timing is impeccable. So, and Gabe, please jump in because I didn't even know about the whole breaking communism, and that's when she slid in.
So she started off as a small businesswoman. Or in small business, she was able to gain a lot of her prominence because Vietnam, there's Vietnam, and then there's South Vietnam. If you're not aware, America has a very interesting relationship with Vietnam in the sense to where we had a war that wasn't won.
Baby, we claim that
it was a lot of carpet bombing. It was a lot of human rights violations on behalf of the United States, which pushed that country into communism, further into communism, because they said whatever America's on, we don't want none of that shit. So let's do the opposite of that. Let's do the opposite of that. Of course, any country that's working out its ideological, political identity, of course, there are going to be some breaks in it in terms of their leadership. And that's a part of when she rose to prominence. There was a period in time to where they didn't have necessarily a communist leadership. And that's when they were able to allow, a little more lax on their economic policy. A little more open to trade to China, even to the West. But that eventually got shut down to a certain extent. They went back to communist leadership. Meanwhile, she was still able to maintain the wealth that she had devised. She was able to buy up banks, smaller banks. And being that, again, this is under a communist regime, consolidation for the sake of oversight and regulation makes more sense to them. America pretends to be on the opposite side of that. Meanwhile, all the media companies have been consolidated.
Mergers and acquisitions 3 or 4. Are a thing here.
So let's be clear. That in itself is communism,
right?
But we're not going.
We love a good hostile takeover.
Exactly. So the main reason why this is interesting is because this is where Vietnam makes the difference between themselves and America. To Mel's point, no, she didn't kill anyone. But they have sentenced her to death. Now, this is the reason why this is so interesting is because American businesses, American corporations, and we're talking Enron, we're talking Bernie Madoff, we're talking Theranos, we're talking Sam Bankman-Fried, we're talking years and years of financial crimes beyond the billions. In which money that they've stolen. No one has ever died.
That's it.
they've never sentenced anyone to death. If anything, the running joke is that they get fancy prisons. If they do go to prison,
they get to go to the nice fed prison.
And the government usually bails out those corporations. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying, what I'm suggesting is for these countries, for us, maybe if we actually really had some penalties, maybe we wouldn't have dealt with the housing bubble in which thousands of people lost their houses. Right. And some people even killed themselves because because of the money that they've lost. Through a lot of these fraud cases, these multi-billion-dollar fraud cases, maybe if we punished people accordingly, not saying the death sentence, because I am against the death sentence in general. I am. But I think
she was given the death penalty for her embezzlement charges, but she was given 20 years for her bribery charges, which I think is interesting.
Nobody's perfect.
It was like embezzlement, death, bribery, 20.
So y'all, I think that Vietnam. I'm not giving them props for the death sentence, for using the death sentence, but I do think that harsher penalties for fucking over people's lives financially are necessary.
Because we don't look at white collar crime as actual crime.
We don't
in this country. Like we look at a smash and grab or so like that is crime. And but at the same time, right? Like some crimes are crimes based on survival. Little smaller crimes, when you look at like the neighborhood you're from and somebody ran up in the store or whatever, a lot of it is out of it's an act of desperation. There is a need that's not being met. And I'm not saying that I'm okay with crime, but I will continue to say that you have to understand that there are certain elements that have to be present to create such an atmosphere where crime tends to happen. White collar crime is just almost overlooked and ignored.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, like we talked about Sam Bankman-Fried a few weeks ago when he got his sentence. What did he get? Was it 15 years he got? I think it was 15 years.
Yeah.
When he got his sentence, the first thing that we talked about was he got so much time because he fucked with people who were way too rich. The housing crisis. Did anybody go to jail?
Nobody.
All these families lost their houses, lost their savings, lost their investments. No one did jail time. You had people on Wall Street betting against the housing market. You had banks packaging up these creative
inflated
subprime loans and then putting them out the back door to be collected by another entity. No one went to jail, but no one went to jail because of who was impacted.
Exactly.
And in this country, the almighty dollar is God. Let's be clear. And so when I watch what happened in Vietnam, I'm like, that is who we say we are as a country. On paper, that's who we say we are. That we're here to protect the people and these rules are in place. But the problem is you allow the people setting the rules to come in with a bag of money in the DC and say, hey, this rule does not really help me and my bank account and my shareholders. Can you change this rule? And you allow them to completely dismantle regulation. Hence, in the case of what is it called? The bank, Silicon Valley Bank.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They went in there and lobbied against the Dodd-Frank Act. Just lobbied to dismantle that, including things that actually would have saved them from what happened to them. So the cause and the cure was actually Silicon Valley Bank and their friends. So when I see what happened in Vietnam, I'm like, if we actually did what we said that we would do to protect people, we would also have people up on the stands for that housing market crash. Because we have evidence of how it was engineered. But we aren't actually who we say we are. We actually don't care about people who cannot line pockets of politicians or change law. We don't care. And we know that we don't care because when things happen to regular ass people who don't have political power, who don't have a bunch of financial power, nothing happens.
I'm going to say, this is my last point. I'm going to say this. we all know that as a government entity, you all know how to instill fear. You've dropped bombs on people. We've seen it in LA with police. We've seen it across America with police militarization. You all know how to make yourselves look like the boogeyman and look like something that nobody wants to fuck with. But when it comes to the rich, the ones who are taking full advantage of the middle class and poor man, you have no teeth.
Not interested.
No one is scared of you. They're not. As a matter of fact, they have money put to the side. They make so much money that they have money put to the side so that when that heat does come, they have the money to pay their lawyers. They have the money to pay people what needs to be paid so that they can continue to do what they're doing comfortably. So here lies the issue. Who do you want to be afraid of you? And who are you afraid of? Clearly, you want the common man to be afraid of you while the corporate entities are your friends.
That's real.
So it is what it is.
Very real. Very real. All right, what we got next?
Next, we have to discuss something that's been brewing in our community amongst our leaders.
Yes.
And that is the question of Palestine and Black leadership in politics, in our government, in our Senate, in our Congress. Let's just go ahead and go through this question. This first question. Let's just go ahead and break this one down. Why should Black people be concerned about Palestine? Mel, give me your reason or reasonings. Why should Black people be concerned about Palestine? I'll tell you yours, I'll tell you mine.
So I kind of have a twofold answer for that. Number one, that our struggles are absolutely connected. I will continue to remind people of who was putting us on game when we began a resurgence of our civil rights movement here in this country after the killing of a handful of Black men. I think it probably started really with Trayvon Martin, and then we had a string of killing of Black men, and we had a few Black women in there. And so, we saw a true resurgence. And with that resurgence came protests and demonstrations on the streets. And because our police forces here are trained and often trained with Israeli police forces or defense forces, the people of Palestinian background were the ones giving us some game like, hey, by the way, they can surveil your face. When you're out there, you should probably wear a mask or cover your face. They taught us how to turn off the geolocating on our phone so they wouldn't know who we were around. They also taught us a lot about when they would throw those smoke bombs. And so I'm talking about actual tangible things.
Practical things.
Practical things that we could do while we were out on the street. A lot of that information came from Palestinian people who knew the tactics that the police here were going to use, because it's the same shit that they've been taking in and dealing with over in their occupied areas of Palestine. Number one. The second thing is Black people should care because there's just a certain level of empathy that comes with looking across the aisle and saying like, yeah, that happened to us too, or that's happening to us. There is a reason why South Africa was one of the first countries to stand up and say, this is an apartheid state. The reason why South Africa could say that is because South Africa was an apartheid state and they knew all the signs. BDS laws, y'all, boycott, divest, and BDS and sanction. That came from South Africa. So a little bit of background on even how that happened. There was like a global conference going on. South Africa rolled up on the Palestinian officials and was like, hey, I need to talk to you. I see what's going on over there, and I want to let you know that you are living under apartheid rule right now. This is not okay. Palestine said, what should I do? I got you. Here are the political moves that not only political, but the economic moves that we used in South Africa to rid ourselves of apartheid. It took a while, but here's how we did it. We asked folks to boycott businesses that supported apartheid policy. We asked them to divest, and we asked them to put sanctions on people. Palestine started doing the same thing. They literally in that conference was like, Israel is an apartheid apartheid state.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, they start doing the same thing South Africa does. We want people to boycott, divest, sanction.
And it did start to happen.
And it started to happen. And then what happened? Israeli lobbyists came to the United States and said, we need you to put anti-BDS laws on the book so that if anyone supports or works for or speaks, in any type of support for BDS entities, corporations, anything like that, they shouldn't be able to work for your company. They shouldn't be able to get a government contract. And so I want y'all as homework from this episode, go look and see what the BDS laws or anti-BDS laws in your state is, because I think it was 21 states last time I checked, either had laws already on the books or there was one somewhere either in the state house or Senate. 21 states already.
I was going to say what it reminds me of, and this was something that we actually, I think we talked about it one episode a while back, but it was an Arkansas newspaper, and they were getting pushed to do pro-Israel material, and the person who was over the newspaper was like, "I'm not doing that," and as a result of it, he received letters from his Chamber of Commerce and just different business entities within his city who were like, "You're wrong. You shouldn't do da da da." They really tried to come at him for choosing not to be a part of it. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah. You're absolutely right. From my perspective, Black people should care, because outside of everything Mel said, because to me that's number one, and two, I would say it shows us who America really cares for. Again, we all know that the highest group or population that deal with homelessness, or percentage-wise, are Black people. We're all aware that food shortages, food deserts are more prevalent in urban communities than even poor, rural, white communities. They're neck and neck. Yeah. But if you put them, if you compare them, if it's comparatively speaking, a larger percentage of us have to deal with it than they do. So for us, what we should take from this, or the reason why we should look at Palestine the way we should look at it, is because it shows us that their priorities don't lie with us. Their priorities lie with groups that are actively harming other groups, which means this: if they'll do it over there, they'll do it here. If they're supporting foreign violence, you absolutely know that they're supporting domestic violence. We need to understand that the same Plymouth Rock that Malcolm X was talking about, that landed on us, is landing on them as well. So I would say it's time for us to start paying more attention, because the same things that they will enable and allow over there, not only have they enabled and allowed over here, we have to understand that going forward, they're prone to doing the same things to us. Yeah. And we just need to be aware of it. So specifically, what we're talking about right now are our leaders. Our leaders, Hakeem Jeffries. There are a good amount of Black leaders who are supported by AIPAC. If you don't know what AIPAC is an Israeli-based political action committee that sends money, that funds a lot of our politicians. So as a result, a lot of our politicians, the same ones who were talking about, who loved calling out southern states for their crushing or butchering of the Voting Rights Act. The same leaders who could call out these states that had the same leaders who called out these states when they had not what's the word I'm looking for, that they got Trayvon Martin killed. What was that law?
Stand your ground.
Stand your ground. The same Black leaders who were calling out these southern states and these Midwest states for their obviously racist ideologues are now completely quiet on the stance of what's going on in Palestine.
Yep.
They're not calling out what they see, and we know why. We know exactly why. So it goes to show, I don't respect it. Let me be real. I don't respect it. Yeah. And I think that a lot of us need to take note of that, because again, if you'll sell out a group, this is my perspective, but if you'll sell out a group just because you're getting paid for it, who's to say you won't sell out your own to protect yourself? Who's to say that you won't do that? Because
and that's real.
We all know that there are politicians who are just for their own gain. We all know that when you're under when you're getting paid the right price, you'll sit down for anything. And the two that I saw be called out, Hakeem Jeffries was heckled, as he should have been, and Raphael Warnock, as he should have been. And so and it was the same thing. I'm not saying it was the same people, but the guise of the heckling was the same. Wherein, how can you sit up there and talk about racial equity and talk about justice for all, and you continue to take AIPAC money and support immense amounts of aid for Israel, and then fucking airdrop boxes of meals over Gaza, some of which, let's be clear, have killed people when they were landing. Yeah. We had Gazans drowning trying to get to the aid that America, was dropping. And so, they are being called out for using their political power for self rather than for what they say they're there for. And they're supposed to be there for the people, right, and for justice and for equity and all of that shit. And yet you may not directly support it, but you certainly have not spoke out against it. You're not using we know, because you're not using certain words. Number one, you're not calling it what it is. It's not a war, it's a genocide. That's it. That's it. These are not things you should be concerned about. These are actual war crimes, what they're committing. Right. The Hague would call them that. Y'all are too educated to not see it. That's the thing. Everybody, all these politicians, black and white, both sides of the aisle, we're seeing who's actually saying something. And you had Lloyd Austin get his ass up there and say, we have no evidence that Israel is committing genocide. And it's none. You have none. But you had evidence of babies being beheaded, because y'all said that. What y'all said. Y'all said that. Yeah, y'all said that. That there were excessive rapes that day. And we heard a lot of that. And none of that was found to be true. So it just goes to show that, it goes to show that who's really in power, who's really in charge. One of my fears is that if they can make you all turn a blind eye to the violence that they're committing against them, there's no telling what else they can make y'all turn a blind eye to. Again, all these politicians have been in these, especially these decades old politicians, specifically Democrats, who have been in these positions and have seen the deterioration of our communities. And yet you still have not come up with any real answers to figure out our issues, or at least nobody to call out. So the reason why black folks in general don't trust politicians, this is on a small scale. This is what we're talking about. And y'all are getting to a really dangerous place, because it's not just black folks who don't trust y'all no more. Y'all are losing the people who originally was like, America is the greatest place on. Y'all are losing that faction. And that is dangerous. So for all of our non-black but people of color who are waking up and can't fathom why these black leaders who should know better why they're not responding, just know that just come on in with the culture, and we'll explain to you that this has been happening since slavery days. There have been black folks in these higher up positions who have used their positions to directly hurt us. Yep. and to elevate themselves.
Look up the slave driver when you get a moment.
Look up the slave driver.
They gave him a little bit of power and a whip. You couldn't even get a horse, but you got a whip and thought you was something.
Django Unchained is one of my favorite.
What's Samuel L. Jackson's character in there?
Steven.
Yeah, baby. Steven
He played that motherfucking part. I hated it, boy.
But didn't he play it though?
He played it though. He played it. Jamie Foxx, the position that he had to play in the last part when he was trying to rescue his wife. Yes. He said that the guy he was working with to help him get his wife, he said that I need you to play a part. And he was like, I need you to be a slaver. Mm-hmm. And he said Jamie Foxx's response to him was he's like, there's nothing worse than a black slaver. Like, that's the lowest that you can be. Mm-hmm. To be a black person who is a slaver, meaning that you enslave black people. Mm-hmm. As a black person, mm-hmm. you're seen as worse than anything. Yep. So I'm only making that point to say that these individuals exist. These individuals have existed, and they have, and we vehemently hate them. I can say that. You're
the lowest.
Yeah, you are the lowest. When we talk about the Clarence Thomases, when we talk about the Candace Owens, there's no love there. There is no love. Do we wish harm or violence to any human? No, we don't.
Of course not.
Of course not. Let's be clear. We don't. But do we have any love, compassion, empathy for any of you? Absolutely not. Because we know that you use your position to get to a position only for you to end up there for the sake of harming more and more of us.
And back to the OJ story, mm-hmm. your position, your education, mm-hmm. your wealth will only do so much to insulate. At the end of the day, you still have bosses to answer to. And when you don't give those bosses the answers that they want, they will remind you exactly who you are.
Who pulls the chain? So y'all, that's what we're seeing. They're showing us who pulls the chain. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. And I mean, since we're here, let's do a quick update on what's even going on in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. So y'all, we saw a lot of movement since our last episode, actually. So we saw Iran respond to the attack on their embassy in Damascus, Syria, which happened on April 1st, I believe. Mm-hmm. Now, remember, this attack was allegedly an Israeli attack on the I think it's called the Islamic Republic. Yeah. Uh-huh. So yeah, it was a building just adjacent to their embassy, right? But it was pretty much their diplomatic land in that space. So Iran's response was to send, was it 300 missiles and drones? I think it was 300. Yeah. So I start getting the notices either Saturday or Sunday night. I can't remember. But when my phone started blowing up, I was like, oh, shit, the Middle East is about to go down. Mm-hmm. The Iron Dome did what the Iron Dome does with the help of the United States and Jordan and I believe the UK. And so they were able to shoot down 99% of everything that Iran sent over there. Now, an Iranian official got up on the mic and was just like, hey, that was making it clear that you cannot just do whatever the fuck you want to us. And that we won't respond. And he was like, I feel like our response was proper given what happened to our embassy and that we just want to remind Israel and the United States and any other allies that we will not be bullied, pushed around, anything like that. That's what Iran said. Literally, it was a response. Well, Biden got on the phone with Netanyahu over the weekend and was like, all right, hey, y'all should be good now, right? The score should be settled. Mm-hmm. You fucked with their embassy. They sent some missiles your way. We should be good. Most of them, you should be good. And Biden specifically, allegedly, told Netanyahu that the United States would not get involved in any further retaliation against, against Iran. Mm-hmm. Well, last night, we got word that Israel was like, well, we're retaliating. And they not
even
only...
though they initiated this again.
Exactly. They not only sent flying objects towards Iran, but they also sent them to what is considered like proxies in the Middle East. So I am of the belief that we are about to see a lot more back and forth between Iran, Israel, which only drags us further into a situation that honestly we're smack dab in the middle of anyway. I believe that Israel will look over at the United States and be like, hey, you gonna let them bully us like this? Like, what's up? And I believe that the United States will say something to the effect of, we don't want to be involved, but, you know, we are your strongest ally and you are representing and protecting our interest in the Middle East. And so, yeah, sure.
So that's interesting because from my perspective, all this is Netanyahu, Satan-yahu, better known by others as Satan-yahu. This is how he's going to maintain power. This is how he's going to keep power. He's going to keep instigating. He's going to keep being violent towards Palestinians. He's going to keep being violent towards his neighboring countries. I sincerely believe that the reason why Israel is even more emboldened, again, they've already, having the United States as their, in a sense, bully insurance. They can be bullies and they're insured by America. I think that this was all intended. They needed Afghanistan to go through that war. They needed Iraq to go through what they went through. They needed more destabilized Middle Eastern countries so that they can do what they're doing. So with Netanyahu, though, the interesting thing is, yes, they have now made it easier for them to do what they've done because a lot of Middle Eastern countries, let's be clear, a lot of countries fear the United States, and rightfully so, because again, the United States is chosen to, instead of helping their own people, they've chosen to invest in guns.
Funk on sight.
Let's be clear. So what this is, Netanyahu wants war. He wants war because he knows that that's going to keep him in power more. There are people who are ready to see Palestine join the UN. There are people who've been making that, who proposing that. Who vetoed it? The United States. Why? Why would you veto them wanting to join the United Nations? Wouldn't that mean that you all would have access to, to a certain extent, have access to control over that country? Isn't that what you all wanted? Because if you join the UN, there's a special set of rules that you have to follow in order to maintain membership. And I mean, there's not much Palestine left, but hey, they're still a country. They're still there. Also, Biden said that he would support a two-state solution.
He said,
he said that. So acknowledging them as a state would actually be on code with what you're saying. But again, it just goes to show that everything is lip service when you're in cahoots with a country like Israel. And
Biden said that it would be vetoed because Palestine needed to work out or negotiate statehood with Israel first. Well, Biden knows that Netanyahu doesn't want two states. So he said it out of his mouth. He's not interested in that. He wants them. I mean, he already tried to push them into Egypt. He just wants them gone.
Yeah.
He wants them gone so that they can have their condos on the beach in Gaza.
Yeah.
So yeah, like for Biden to even say I support a two-state solution, and the only reason why we're going to veto their application for full membership is because they need to work it out with Israel, knowing that your boy has no interest in that.
How can you work something out tell them to work something out with the group that hates them? Let's be clear. This is hatred.
They don't even want to sit they wouldn't even send delegates to Cairo to talk about Like, come on, Biden.
And their solution is the solution that Israel keeps putting on the table is one that nobody should accept. So it's just one of those things where it's like, America, this is y'all showing, this is y'all showing, your version of diplomacy with groups that you don't respect.
That's right.
Again, a lot of you all, American leadership has always been, for the most part, work it out within your state. How can Black people work out things? I mean, we're talking about, the 60s, 70s, hell, you can talk about now, but let's say the 60s. Work these things out within your state. How can you work something out with your state when your state is intentionally aimed at not allowing you to be a part of the political process, economic process? But yes, work that out within your state.
It's a toxic relationship. You know how, like, back, I don't know if your grandmother ever told you a story like this, but like back when my grandmother got married, she was like 16, right? She's a Mississippi girl. And her first husband was very violent. But her mother would always send her back when she would go run into the house or whatever, because that's your husband. You need to go work it out. You need to go work it out. My grandmother would say, he has no interest in that. Like, there's no talking to this man. Yeah. His whole goal when he gets mad is to hurt me. He's not interested in a solution and any internal work, and I think about like that type of toxicity that a lot of people just in person-to-person relationships. I'm going to keep running back and trying to work it out with this person who really has no interest.
No interest.
And where they are intentionally trying to misunderstand you so that they can continue to put hands on you and to treat you bad. And that's how I see Black people's relationship with the United States. And that's how I see Palestinian relationships with Israelis.
I am not sure who said it, but what you said is a direct quote from what they said. They said, the quote is basically, I have no desire to understand people who are hell-bent on misunderstanding me.
That's it.
And that's exactly.
Why would I go seek understanding knowing that this person is hell-bent on misunderstanding me?
So y'all, as the world turns, again, we are learning more about what's really real. Again, this is something me and Mel were aware of, but it is interesting because an entire generation is now learning about the country that they belong to. They are learning that this is becoming an increasingly authoritarian, increasingly, what's the word? It's the word, it's not just authoritarian. It's increasingly becoming more dystopian in terms of what's really going on. And what's really going on is lives do not matter when money's involved. Lives do not matter when personal interests are involved. And so we're seeing it. We just happen to have so much money that we're kind of insulated from it. A good amount of us can reap that benefit, but there are a lot of people who are falling prey to it.
That's real. That's real. And you talk about a generation waking up to the country that they belong to and that they live in. It's bittersweet for me to watch the awakening, because who was that told us to be Black in America and to be just a little bit conscious?
James Baldwin,
to be in a constant state of rage. And I feel like I've probably been in that constant state of rage since I was a teenager.
Man.
But to now watch people who I used to be jealous of, because like, ignorance really is bliss. Like they could just not know the things that you and I seek out on the daily. And I'm going to buy my bottles and I'm like, you were having such a good, and I'm not saying I haven't done all of that, but there was always this knowing of what was happening in the background. And so to watch the awakening happen is really bittersweet, because I feel for them, because now I know they can empathize with how I felt for decades now. But also I'm happy because it means that things may actually change if enough people wake up and decide we're done with this shit.
Right.
We're done. So yeah, and I'm talking people who I never thought would wake up to what was happening. Like, they was so ignorant and happy to be ignorant.
I'm seeing our age, our group, people who have lost their jobs,
rent sky high.
They are realizing that this quote unquote American dream that was sold to us might be some bullshit. I'll tell people this all the time. I grew up poor. I feel like every think of every systemic ill that we talk about, I for sure have experienced it, from the injection of drugs into our community to the removal of resources from our community, from colorism to racism to poverty to violence to the systematic breakdown of Black families. And again, that was systematic, let's be clear. And the reason why it's systematic is because if statistics show that having a mom and a dad in a household dramatically increases the likelihood of success for a child, why would you take one person out except for to repeat that process? So I have experienced
that, and I can feed them into my pipeline and make money off of them. So we got that 14th Amendment. And it was killing two birds with one stone. I'm saying that Mel and I have experienced just about every societal ill that they have dropped on us. So we have never. I lost my brother, and imagine my mom. I think about my mom, and I think about how she grew up poor, how she was sexually assaulted, how she developed trauma or experienced trauma, and as a result it played out on her the rest of her life. She had experienced domestic violence, everything that she experienced, and how it led to where she is now, and how she's lost half of her children, which it didn't have to happen. So it's like we've seen this, and it's like us seeing it, we know what's going on. So I am grateful that more and more people are seeing what we already knew, what we already experienced. Because the education of what I think one of the things that I appreciated growing up is I asked why. Why was my neighborhood like this? Why was my school trash? Why is my family in this condition? And it wasn't because I was like looking across the street and seeing someone else in a better situation. Everybody was poor. Everybody was dealing with the crack epidemic. But the curiosity is what led me to go read and study about exactly what you talked about. The injection of certain things into our neighborhood, the divestment from our neighborhoods, and how all of those things played into what I was seeing every day. I understood then why I didn't have fresh grocery stores in my neighborhood. I understood why there were liquor stores everywhere. I understood why everyone rented their houses and why the owners of those houses lived on the west side of LA. I began to understand why there were so many churches and why that became like a bedrock for a lot of Black families. I understood why there were no jobs, why the schools were trash. We had old books. I got it. And what understanding led me to is, okay, I get it. How do I play offense now? How do I put myself in a position to be able to circumvent some of these systems that are meant to keep me trapped here? And I think that is the beauty, y'all, of, again, reading those banned books. And Black bookstores that mean having these conversations with kids when they're young so that they can develop that understanding. And don't get me wrong, we always gonna have to be on defense, but offense is where you genuinely can make some like generational changes in your family. When one person says, all right, I may not be able to finish school, but I'm gonna make sure my sons get through or my daughters get through, or you can stay here at the house so you can start your business. You ain't got to leave when you 18. Like, save your money so we can buy another house and begin. When we start playing offense, y'all, but all of that comes from education. All of that comes from understanding why our situation is the way it is.
I'm gonna say it's my last point to it. I will always say this. It's not that they're outsmarting us. They're just out violent us. They've just been more violent and more brutal than us. Brutal than us. So we can think I sincerely believe that we can think our way out. And the only way that we can think our way out of this is if we get better ideas. The only way that we can get ideas is by reading, by having conversations. So y'all, summing up my perspective, everything that's happening in Palestine is we need to be paying attention because to a certain extent, they've done these things to us. And if they're allowing this present day now, 2024, they're allowing these things to happen to those people over there, who is to say that they won't allow certain things to happen to us?
We don't stand a chance, y'all. That's real. That's real. Well, that's what we got. It ended up being a heavier episode than I thought, but Jesus. Yeah, let's check in. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good.
Actually, I'm quite happy.
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Again, let's be clear here. My happiness does not come from anything America intentionally wanted me to have. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
My happiness was as a result of me playing offense and me realizing that I have survived most of the major pitfalls that were set in my place that America allowed. Let's be clear. This country allowed these pitfalls to be present in my journey, but I was able to escape the majority of them. So now I have a certain level of happiness, a certain level of appreciation that I have for life in general.
That's awesome.
But specifically right now, I'm pretty good.
That's awesome.
Good.
I love it.
How about you?
Yeah, I am. I'm pretty good too. I had a super busy week, but productive. A lot of great announcements came out. So I was actually able to announce two things. One, I got selected for the Voyage magazine accelerator program.
Oh, that's dope.
So yeah, super excited to be working with them. And then the second thing that I was finally able to announce is I won a fellowship with NBC Universal. It's a journalism fellowship, and so we'll be able to create content for NBC monthly, which I'm really, really excited about. So yeah, there's one more announcement I've been holding on to just because, well, Gabe knows, but just because I need to finish one thing.
Understood.
And then the other thing, it's my birthday today, so
happy birthday to you.
Give it to me.
That's my
the big 3-6, man. And I think I woke up this morning like you, just very grateful. Like I also have this baseline of joy that I walk around with, and it's because I'm like, damn, all the things that could have taken me out and like could have taken me down and shit, like to be here at 36, which I didn't always see for myself. When I was a young girl, I didn't always see like life as an adult because I wasn't really sure what the next day was going to be like. But yeah, to be able to, take care of myself and help my grandma and be a aunt and a friend and tell stories for a living. I'm just very grateful. So yeah, as soon as we wrap, I'm gonna go grab my sisters from the airport and like turn up. That's the weekend. Yeah.
All right, y'all. So we appreciate y'all locking in with us. Like, follow, subscribe. If you on Mel's Instagram, make sure you wish her a happy birthday. Show her some love.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? Big shout out to Sour Kids Productions.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all. Appreciate you, Kenny.
All right, that's what I got.
All right.
That's it.
Peace.
We'll see y'all next week.
See you next week.
Still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.